Welcome to How Women Inspire. My guest today is a best-selling author. She's also a strategist, a board member, a teacher, a facilitator, and a friend to me and so many other women who just are so lucky to have her in their universe. This visionary CEO runs a company called Flexibility. It's recognized for 3 consecutive years as Best for the World Governance by B Labs. How about that? Best for the world. Who I would love to have that be the way people describe things I'm working on. In 2022, Inc. magazine recognized Flexibility as best in business management consulting. This trailblazer drives the culture and strategy of this social impact workplace consulting firm and helps build high performance teams through diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. She believes that company culture drives growth and profitability. And I can't wait to dive in and learn about all the elements that you scaffold in there. She is known for her ability to simplify the complex and in her strategy and scenario planning work, skills that served her well in managing risk, in bet the company trials. Most importantly, she shows up with an abundant mindset, a willingness to lean into uncomfortable situations, and the creativity to turn every challenge into an opportunity to grow and learn. Nancy Geenen, I am so happy to get to spend time with you today.
Well, Julie, this is the highlight of my day. And I think whenever we get done recording, I'm going to want that introduction and kind of play it every time I get on a stage in a keynote. This is a great introduction. Thank you so much. That was very kind.
Oh, well, I mean, you are a woman who is a strategist and you show up and you make it happen and you do it with grace and kindness. And there are not very many people who do it like you do. And you actually moved from being a trial attorney, which I don't always think about being the sweetest, kindest people, and a prosecutor for the United Nations. And now you're a serial entrepreneur. How did you make that transition?
I failed miserably in management at the law firm. Truly.
Okay.
No, I say it.
Those things, right?
Yeah, I say it in jest, but in certain respects, it goes back to there was this women's group meeting in our offices in the conference room, and we were giving them wine and soda. And I asked, are they paying for it? And somebody said, well, no. And it happened to be a women's network peer group. And I said, well, at least if they're meeting in my conference room, I should be able to talk to them. And so that's how I discovered this world of entrepreneurship and women leading businesses. The failure part came when I was in, the big kind of she poo-poo law firm, managing partner in Northern California offices, all the right
Fancy, Nancy.
Oh, yeah, very fancy. White shirts, flouncy skirts all the time. And really thought I was headed for the executive committee and was devastated to have the executive committee tell me that I have reached the top. I wasn't going any further. And you can look at that in all kinds of different ways. Well, what did I do? Mostly it was hubris. I just thought I was the next best thing since sliced bread and bottled beer. But a lot of it was kind of expectations without doing the internal introspective work. And so from there, I thought I was going to be a UPS driver. I love driving. I love giving presents. Brown's not really a great color for me. I was going to work at Whole Foods. And then I thought, well, I should do something I really know a lot about. So we started a trial consulting firm. And that was like that first foray into what it means to be an entrepreneur and leaving the big corporate life and doing stuff on my own for a while.
And how many entrepreneurial journeys have you been on? How many number is this?
I think this is the 5th company now.
Oh my God. Yeah. You are absolutely a pro. That sort of like qualifies you as serial, I think.
Well, I like starting stuff, and once it gets to maintenance mode, I'm bored. And so the next shiny ball.
I get it. When you exited those companies, did you sell them? Did you shut them down? What kind of exits have you had?
Mostly sold. I think the fastest we were successful was the trial consulting firm, which went from 0 to 6 million in under 4 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was, but we were a small group and we did a lot of 1099. So, we didn't have a big nut on a monthly basis, but what we did have was great talent. Yeah. And I really wanted to take that to a franchise model. I thought we could do it. but my other partners did not. And I said, okay, that's great. This is kind of boring. I'd love to be a 1099. I don't need to be an equity owner anymore. And I'm tired of worrying about the business. I want to do the next innovative thing.
Yeah.
So mostly it's selling equity position into the partners. We always had, tag along, come along provisions we had great documents. So it allowed an ease of getting in and out of a company, which makes a big difference.
Well, I've known a lot of lawyers in my life, and I've known a lot of entrepreneurs, and I don't always think that they're the same type of person. And so it's very interesting to hear they didn't see you as the leader in that company, but here you are leading 5 times over. It's just kind of interesting,
Yeah, it's a different mindset. And I'm not structured to follow orders very well.
Yeah, well,
and as you're going up, you're thinking, well, I'm making my way. And I see this path, and I'm eventually going to be the one shaping the culture of the company. And I got stalled out. And so that was okay.
Okay. So right now you are running a company called Flexibility with an A in there. How did that get started? What is that, the genesis?
For about 10 years, I had sat on the board of directors of a nonprofit called GALT Foundation, which was a temporary staffing firm for individuals with disabilities. And I was the vice chair and head of the governance committee, which is where I got a lot of my board experience because it was a $30 million operation. And we needed an interim CEO at the time. And I said, hey, I can do that. It's better than Whole Foods. And we really went into this idea of really creating equity and inclusion. And we really thought about it as inclusion around the space of individuals with disabilities in the workplace. So Flexibility was born out of, say, those 2 years as the interim CEO. And we said, we should do this for all identities, not just for individuals with disabilities. And the board, it's a common theme. The board said, great, Nancy, no.
Go do that.
We don't want to do that. But it's the next thing. It's what we should be doing. It's coming at us. And this was probably 2016, 2017. So really before George Floyd murder.
Yeah, they didn't know. You had the tea leaves.
It was fun. It was about people. And I think that's what being a trial lawyer gave me is I really understood how to see the nuance around people and what triggers them and what ticks them and what makes them really work well. And so it came from that. So we formed a new company and just made it around equity and inclusion in the workplace at that time. And then COVID hit. And so it became Workspace. And not many people using that area.
So what about this affirmative action ruling with the Supreme Court? How is that going to impact the work world and your work, do you think?
It's not going to impact the work. It's going to impact how we describe the work. So, we can get very caught up in kind of ESG and DEI and CSR and all these different things. The companies that want to do this good work, which is to really change the world by recognizing that I have privilege. The best privilege I have, I graduated from college and grad school with no debt. That's an enormous, and only a few student loans, which were Pell Grants. So they were paid off once I did my public service. But this idea now is that we aren't going to check boxes, and the companies that maybe had affirmative action plans that weren't pursuant to a court order, maybe they were doing it, maybe they weren't. They're not going to call it that anymore. I think what's more interesting is the lawsuits that are hitting the academic institutions now about legacy, because that really does interfere with space for kids and really is a privilege piece. That one is like, how do we give individuals who need a leg up help and maybe weight things a little differently versus you don't automatically get in because your mom and dad both graduated from Harvard. So I think we should do the same things. We just can't call it different. Call it out differently and call people in to do more. And probably earlier in education as it applies to the academic institutions anyway.
Do you feel like it's going to bleed into corporate D&I programs? And it's already, I see.
Yeah, I think there are now lawsuits. I think actually you may have been the one to tell me about it, that a private equity, BIPAC-owned private equity firm got sued because they're saying it's discrimination, racial discrimination, to only lend to other BIPAC individuals, business owners. And I think there was a law firm that is now targeted, and I can't remember who it is. Yeah. It isn't a blue box.
Colossal waste to me. I mean, it's just so distracting. And anyway, well, thank you for the work you're doing. And thank you for you have great perspective on it. You don't seem as mad as I am. You feels like you can actually go in with a level head and be like, okay, let's reset the language. Let's pivot, figure out how to still do the work.
Well, we have to,
yeah.
I mean, essentially, you got to fight the right battle. We have to win the war.
Yeah.
That battle is a distraction because, I mean, even, and again, goes back to why a trial lawyer, now a business consultant about DEI, how you frame the issue or who controls the agenda, that controls the outcome.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to frame the issue in a way that we can keep doing all this great work. And the companies that really mean it will do so.
Yeah.
Those that are kind of saying, hey, yeah, we're checking the box. We have diversity training and all this.
Right.
That's
successful diversity training, right?
Yeah. They're hard to run in the first place. So, okay.
So you can work with individual companies as a consultant, but there's a limit to you and how many people you can touch. So I'm so excited that you just wrote a book called The Advantage of Other. Give me the headshot. Why did you write that book? And what are we going to learn?
I wrote that book because I'm a voracious reader. And as we were thinking about DEI, and I was learning and trying to figure out how do we do this in a way that we can reach privately held companies, because the publicly held companies were going to do what they're going to do. And they're big, huge tankers in the middle of the ocean. It takes hours to move 5 degrees. And some of them will do a great job. But there was not a lot written for entrepreneurs, for founders, for business owners. And a lot of the lessons that I had learned along the way in my own stories or stories that were shared with me in my legal career were about leadership and inclusion, about making somebody feel seen and heard. And so when COVID hit and I was kind of wandering around the apartment, what am I going to do? My wife said, why did you write that book you always talk about? I said, yeah, but who's going to read
the book? Put that energy to use in some other women, wearing out the carpet.
and I was like, no one wants to hear my story. And she was like, you sell yourself short. You tell great stories.
Yeah, you do.
And sometimes your stories go on forever and that's why you need an editor. But it was really about really finding my voice, somewhat of a personal journey, but mostly stories about entrepreneurship and leadership and management and how they're different. Talking about clients that I had, and either as a trial attorney or even in our DEIB practice, to really say, how do you reach in and make a difference? And we tease about it. It's like we want to take inclusion. It's like putting the I back in team, because we got to start with that individual first. If that individual doesn't feel that belonging, you are not getting the best performance. And if one doesn't, most of them don't. So that's really kind of where it started. Not many women writers, a lot of men writing about this issue, a lot of people of color writing about this issue, not many LGBTQ+. When I talked to the publisher, I was bringing a perspective that they hadn't seen or hadn't found yet. Yeah. And I'm sure there's more coming. So but that's kind of why. And it's just a matter of pulling. I was talking to someone earlier about how did you write the book? And I said, well, some of it I just dictated and then read what I wrote and revised it a whole bunch. And other times it was going back to either articles that I had written or advice I had given and bringing that into a story, a vignette that had some good lessons and then some takeaways and some recommendations.
I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm not asking for a seat at the table. My friends, this is the first generation of us. We have a huge opportunity. We have power and influence and wealth. And we can start building the tables where we get the prime seats. Today, we want to invite you to join us as investors in venture. I know no one's asked you to do it before. It might be something that seems scary or foreign, but I promise you it's not that different than investing in a mutual fund where your retirement funds are. I want you to lean in and just learn a little bit more. How about making a commitment that in the next 12 months, you can give yourself 12 months to figure it out and to take a step. I want to invite you to be part of the new table of power and influence and wealth. You're invited. I want to sit at the table with you because we're going to make big change. We're going to make the world we've been dreaming of. Is there a favorite story or a highlight you can share with us?
The one I like most is that it's about the profits chapter. The 5 chapters are alliteration, and I never get them in the right order, but it's presence, partners, people, profits, and pipeline. I think that's all five. It's close to those five. I often pull down the book and look to get it right. But the profits chapter was the most difficult to write because I am not a numbers person to the point of being neurodiverse, like a phasic about it. I do Sudoku so I can do the easy one in an hour. I just don't see those lines. So we call it the taco truck story because it really is about knowing how much your product costs, your cost of goods, and you can't sell stuff for more than it costs you to make it. And the stories about the taco truck that was in the parking lot, and he was a great guy, had a great kind of hawker, line was always long, started a second truck, and it just failed miserably. And two things happened there. One was he was selling tacos for more, well, actually there were burritos, but more than what they cost to make because he didn't understand his costs. And so once we worked with him because we loved him so much, we didn't want him to fail, we'd become friends. And that story is just an easy way to really say you gotta have your handle around the numbers or have somebody who will help you get there. Because if you don't have that, and I know you're a numbers person, if you don't have that, your success ratio goes down quite a bit.
You can have the best product out there, but I'll never forget. Well, we had a tragedy in our family, and my brother-in-law died, and 3 of his brothers. It was terrible, all in one car accident. And my sister-in-law, all of a sudden, had to run this candy store by herself. She never run anything by herself. And I just remember it's like, honey, just because that's what the market will pay for it, you're selling it for less than what you spent on it. So this isn't going to work. And unfortunately, that's what happened. It's so hard to help families sometimes too. So you have become such a really important voice and centerpiece for how women lead. Everybody looks forward to getting to spend time with you, and you are someone who delivers, and it's wonderful. How did you get involved, and why? Why are you involved?
Oh, I was involved. We were trying to figure this out, like when in prep for this discussion or conversation was my first How Women Lead meeting, but it was when I had left. I was still at the law firm. I was no longer managing partner, so my failure was very public. And I was looking for my next belonging place. And like finding that women's peer network that were meeting in my office, they were pertinent at the time. This one was really about a group of professional women who were doing good things in the world and trying to make a difference for women because it was just there. So I went to a couple of those big meetings that you had at offices in Silicon Valley and Santa Clara.
Arnold or something.
Yeah, speakers and people showing up. And I'm pretty shy in a big group. I'm really good one-on-one. In a big group, I'm kind of hanging in the back, being observing, watching what's going. But there was something in the leadership group that you had brought around you. And the way that you all had each other's back. It's not any event. It's not a one thing, but there was a belonging. I was like, I want to be part of that. And it took me a bunch of years to get to, really be as involved as I am now, because of course you get pulled in all these different directions, and how do we allocate time and what's important now, and moving to the East Coast. But, I've been part of a lot of groups, and it's when you start to get really focused on the things that really matter, they're fewer, but they're so much deeper. That really was it. And I watched you grow as a leader and as a CEO and as an innovator, and you were always doing cool new stuff. And that to me is like, ooh, I want to do cool new stuff.
Because I have the same sickness you have, which is like, let's
what
do
comes next? Yeah. So that was it.
Well, boy, that touched my heart. I got tears in my eyes. So that's kind of my goal in life, is to create that environment for beautiful women like you who are contributing so much to the world. I hope everybody has that experience. Let's talk about your board journey, corporate board journey. When did that start?
It was very intentional. The law firm that I was managing partner of in San Francisco had just purchased a healthcare boutique. And it was a Midwest law firm, came to San Francisco. And I had just come back from the United Nations. I was an attorney. I had no clients. I didn't want to go back to the old law firm. They had been swallowed up by a bigger Chicago firm that didn't really sit well with me. I didn't know anybody. And I started chair of the litigation department because I was a prosecutor, and then got into a leadership role. And the firm wanted to establish its brand. And I said, well, you got to get on boards. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, do good in the world. That's you give to get. And so I think the first nonprofit board. I think I joined the Golden Gate Business Association, which is the oldest LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. And from there, made good friends with the editor-in-chief of the Business Journal. And from there, got onto the executive committee as an independent director for the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, and then started the nonprofits where I cared and where I showed up. And I'm usually only on 4 boards, and usually 2 nonprofits that I care deeply about, and then 2 private firms that where I can make real change. And again, it's the part about being in control and wanting to change.
Yeah.
A public board would be great. I would love to get public board position, and I think I could do a lot there in a way that most people wouldn't expect a lawyer with lots of governor experience and risk management experience to do, because I think differently than most lawyers. But I really enjoy the private company boards because as an independent director, I really make a difference. And that's where I feel.
At this stage in life, if you're not making a difference, it's awfully hard to really want to show up. Well, and your book is about the advantage of other, and you literally just described, like, I think differently. And literally that up games everybody else who's in a group with you. It helps everybody else. Well, when they prepare differently, you'll think of something or ask a question. It forces everybody to rethink their position. And that is the biggest gift in any governance environment that you could find. And I don't know that maybe that's the next article or book, because I don't know that people really get that in their bones. It's easier if you and I think exactly the same to like make decisions and go fast. That doesn't mean it's the good decisions or that we're going to innovate or do things well. I mean, I know that's the punchline in part of your book, right? But okay, Nancy. So there's so many, I want to talk to you forever, but we probably are getting close to our time. If you were going to leave this audience with a piece of advice or wisdom, what would that be? What is the message you want to share?
Be curious. Don't ask why, ask what if. Why is so built up in judgment, and it forces people into justifications. But if you say, what if you weren't right? What if it was different?
So disarming. It helps everybody else get on board with exploring as opposed to defending. Yeah, that to me, I think is the one thing. And that, I started my career as a high school teacher. In my first year of teaching, I was teaching in a Catholic co-ed service school. Most kids weren't going to college. And one semester I was teaching science fiction to a bunch of kids who barely could read. And next semester I was teaching Shakespeare to seniors. And the what if question in the sci-fi class has stayed with me since 1982. Just what if? How could people find you if they want to get in touch with you and invite you to their public company board?
Yes. My LinkedIn profile is, the linkedin.com/NJ Geenen is where you find me. NJ. So it's NJGEENEN. Flexibility.com, flexibility with an A, as you said. I also, when I started writing my book, the publishers asked me to start my own website, which is nancygeenen.com, which I do a blog just about every month about something I'm interested in. Mostly, I think it's going to be chapters of maybe the next book, but it's just out there. I don't do a lot with it, but it's there to read.
Well, you are such fuel. Every time I'm with you, I feel like I get a new perspective. I get inspired, and I just feel safe because I feel like you're the kind of person who, like, if I get stuck, I could call on you.
You could.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Is the last question I have for you. How do you want to continue inspiring and empowering women?
Well, I really like this idea that Patricia and I ended on last week when we were talking about how women lead authors, how women write. And really, and even brought that up to the affinity group for the LGBT group and talking about it. And there's a lot of people who either have written and don't talk about it, unabashedly visible. Come on, gals, get with it.
Yeah.
And then also some who are like, I've been thinking about it, but I don't know how. And I was like, you don't know how, or you don't know, you're afraid to start? And I think that's so I think that's something that's very intriguing to me because I love learning. I'm thinking about getting my doctorate in education, organizational and learning and innovation. I know. Really.
What happened? That's amazing. I love it.
It's kind of like my kids are like, how many degrees do you need? I said, I have to have more than you. And right now I've only got one more. So I need
keep ahead of the game.
and just really focus on women in the world and women in the workspace and women on boards, women investing. How do we get everybody to not just be financially literate, but just be comfortable with money?
Yeah.
The reason I can do the things I do, even though I can't add or subtract, I'm pretty comfortable with my, financial situation and I obviously I'm not afraid of risk. So over time you make money.
Well, thank you, Nancy. In so many ways, I feel like it was sort of like a How Women Lead Love Fest in this call. And in so many ways, you just modeled how you can be the curator, the architect, you can contribute to the development of this network, this organization, because coming soon, How Women Write by Nancy Geenen. So thank you so much.
Yeah, again, I just keep showing up. That's what I do.
Thank you for showing up for all of us today. What a treat to spend time with you.